I'm with Al Crunchi of San Lorenzo Gold. San Lorenzo is focused on the Salvadora property in Chile, and the company had some news a few weeks ago, and I want to delve into it in more detail with Al. Al, how are you today?
Hey, good morning. I'm doing real well. Thanks. Nice to see you, Robert.
So the latest news release delves into the recent findings from the IP survey that you completed at Salvadora. And also it sort of sets the stage for the next phase of drilling at the Cerro Blanco porphyry target. So tell us about the IP survey and what you learned from it.
Yeah, sure. So the IP survey actually covered two targets, Cerro Blanco and Arco de Oro at the northwest end, but let's focus on Cerro Blanco to start with. So your viewers may remember that our northern line there had a big break in it, and that was because of terrain. We only had two lines when we did our first three-hole drilling program. So we targeted IP anomalies, and it was quite amazing that results really mirrored what the IP said. So that was a confidence booster for sure. So here about 4 months ago, I guess now, we did an infill line between the two existing lines, and then we also extended the northernmost line further to the west. But what was really interesting and what has us really pumped, frankly, is that by far the strongest chargeability was on the eastern side of the line that had a break in it. And for us to access that was going to be very costly. And we had already finished a 7-kilometer access road, which was the big impediment to us drilling there. So we decided to do a 3-hole program, which was a recce program, really, 500-meter apart spaced holes, and they worked out quite well. But getting back to the recent survey, the anomaly that was on the northernmost line on the eastern side of it was confirmed with that center line that we were able to go all the way across with, and it's by far the strongest anomaly that we've seen so far. So we're mapping it, and it kind of extends on a trend from the first hole we drilled, 124, up to the northern line, and it really bodes well. So our first hole is going to be targeting that IP feature. Then we also, as I said, extended that northern line to the west, where we had drilled our third hole, and it showed another feature that's quite a bit wider, that has a bit of a saddle in it that corresponds to a resistivity feature. And you're aware of Terry Walker, of course, who is our geo in country, and he's our quarterback of this exploration program. It's got him quite excited about the potential to the west as well. And this whole feature, or interpretation of the feature, I guess I should say, seems to have it wrapping around that leach cap feature you can see so plainly at surface. So we've been doing an awful lot of modeling on this, and we're very encouraged by what we got, and looking forward to drilling quite soon.
Okay, that's my next question. When does drilling start at the Cerro Blanco target? I figured we were targeting sometime in the next 2 weeks, but tell me if I'm right or wrong on that.
Our target is to be drilling ASAP, and I think that's about 2 weeks. Let me explain why. We have submitted the Cerro Blanco targets, pad locations more specifically, to Senacumen, that's the mining regulator, of course, in Chile. And they have 20 working days, or in other words, 30 calendar days to respond. And if they don't respond, you're free to go ahead. Now, the construction to get there won't be very significant, which is quite different than what we were looking at for that fourth potential hole last program. So once we get the approvals, which again are already in, we'll start construction. We would hope, we're certainly going to be drilling in September, and we're hoping by the middle of September. I want to preface that with, there's always regulatory requirements, but they've been very easy to manage in Chile. The regulators there are domiciled in Copiapó, which is only an hour drive away, and we're in good stead with them. So here's hoping that by the middle of September, we will have a drill turning at Cerro Blanco.
Okay, so at Cerro Blanco, once you get the approval from the regulator for the drill pad locations, then your guys can mobilize to site and build those pads in 2 to 3 days. Is that a fair assumption?
The fair assumption is that the first hole would only take 2 or 3 days to build the pad, to get to it and build the pad. And so we would mobilize the rig onto that pad. And while that hole is drilling, we would be finishing 2 more pads for sure. And we are quite seriously thinking of expanding the program at Cerro Blanco from 3 holes to 5. And we've identified the other 2 holes as well, which would be drilled from the existing pads on the southern line, but in opposite directions. Our desire is to start demonstrating both width and strike. It's pretty silly to say that this early, but the IP line at the south certainly shows that the anomaly is at least or maybe stronger in the easterly direction from where we drilled rather than the westerly direction where we already have drilled.
Okay. And at the Cerro Blanco target, the IP has been proven in the 3 holes drilled to date to correlate pretty well. I mean, the chargeability anomaly in the IP correlates pretty well with the gold that is seen in drilling. And I just want to go over hole 1-24 was 153 meters, grading 1.04 grams per ton gold, and hole 02-24 was 1.02 grams per ton gold over nearly 90 meters. So those are 2 encouraging intercepts early on in a pretty wide target area. So you're following the IP because it's proven to work well. What would you need to see to expand this phase of drilling at Cerro Blanco?
Well, results, of course, right? We are most definitely going to drill the first 3 holes that we showed in a press release about 2 weeks ago. We anticipate a second press release on Cerro Blanco to come out next week that will illustrate the IP more clearly on the southern line and why we are keen to, shall we say, turn the drill around on those 2 pads, 1 of 24 and 2 of 24, and drill down there into what appears to be even stronger IP signature. But to answer your question very specifically, and I guess it's a pretty standard answer and obvious, we need results. So, I mean, clearly when you're drilling into these disseminated ore bodies, it's tough to tell for sure what you've got as you're looking at core, but we have been able to decide or determine that, pyrite and gold are connected in the system. And so it's almost for sure we're going to drill 5 holes instead of 3 holes at Cerro Blanco in this next program.
Okay. And before we get into the other target areas at Salvadora, I just want to talk about money and finances because, San Lorenzo is a bit of an unusual company. We've already, discussed this back in March when we had our first interview. We went over the reasons why the company is a bit different than a standard venture listed junior. But, some investors see, well, you had great drill results early in the year. Why wouldn't you then do a big capital raise and do a 5,000 meter drill program or something like that? We discussed it a little bit. You basically kind of told me that you didn't think the company was being properly valued and you didn't want to do a dilutive financing at a low share price. Have you had any further thoughts on that? And is it a possibility that San Lorenzo will actually do a big capital raise, perhaps on the back of more good results at Cerro Blanco.
Yeah, I recall our last conversation, and Robert, you may recall my comment that sometimes in life you have to make a decision. Sometimes it's the right one, and sometimes it's the wrong one, and clearly the drill bit is going to be the arbiter of that. But the decision was made that we would do one more drilling program, targeting those two targets, Cerro Blanco and Arco de Oro, before we went back to the market. So, the board has discussed it. I've discussed it with the board. It's a factor of at what price are you happy to dilute? Now, I suppose this in $1 will get you a cup of coffee, but we believe that there's something very significant there. So I think that we have to show the market the results of this upcoming program at Cerro Blanco and Arco de Oro before we go back to the market for financing. Now, I would point out that the conversion price of the first credit facility was about 3 or 4 times the stock price. This last one that we just announced is a 50% bump from what the stock was trading at the time. But let me point out that Terry and I are pretty keen on this program. At least on the initial stages here, we recognize that there's going to have to be more people brought into the story. But it's not like we have to, our last dollar is riding on this. We're doing it as a labor of love and just really love this. So we want to bring this to another level, and then for sure do 5,000 or 10,000 meters of drilling. But after we do this next program. So that was the decision that was made. We hope it was the right one. And really, it's going to be the drill bit that tells us whether it was the right one or the wrong one.
It's very interesting because obviously I speak to a lot of junior mining CEOs on a regular basis. I have a lot of conversations, with these people. And usually, I mean like 90 to 95% of the time, the lesson is always take the money. Now, I know that's not always the right move. Sometimes taking the money can be a really bad move, and it screws you up for the future. But I'm hearing you say that this next phase of drilling at Salvadora is kind of going to be the one where you decide if San Lorenzo is going to be a bigger company with a bigger budget and more drills turning, or something else is going to happen. You just wanted to see a few more holes go down and see the results prior to making that call. Is that right?
I think it's very much right. And then I want to amplify that by the fact that we acknowledge that maybe our material hasn't been good enough or professional enough, and we are working on that. It is a work in progress, and maybe we haven't had the story out there to everybody that really shows what the potential at Salvadora is. We are biased, as I said earlier, but really think we have a tiger by the tail here. So let's do this methodically and properly, and then I think all shareholders will have the opportunity to do very, very well. I preface that, of course, with it's all about the drill bit, but we feel pretty good about these targets.
Okay, very good. And the cool thing about Salvadora is that it's not just one porphyry target. You have like 5 or 6 target zones across the property, including a pretty impressive gold vein on the western side of the property, a very extensive one. What is the latest news from the property-wide work that you've done?
Well, there's 2 phases to that, or 2 parts to the answer to that question. First of all, we're very cognizant of the fact that we need to extend strike length on that principal vein system that we've already drilled a number of holes on. But what I'd like to point out is maybe swarming isn't a great way to describe it, but there's a lot of veins that are in a very short or tight area. We've only really explored the principal vein, and there's a number of other parallel ones. There's been suggestions about being able to maybe open pit this at some reasonable grades, but we need to do some more drilling. So it is our intention in this next program, in fact, for sure, we're going to do additional drilling at where we've been focused on near that area where we drilled 1 of 25 and where we drilled 4 of 22. So that's going to be exciting. But in addition, the second part of the answer is that we did shoot IP or acquire IP in the Northwest Extension, where there are workings on surface again. People may forget that one of our exploration tools is the fact that there's shallow artisanal workings for about 5 kilometers on this feature. And so that is an easy guide, I guess. But we shot some or got some IP at the northern end there, and it's very interesting. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment on it right this minute because it hasn't been released. But I would expect that that's going to be released within the next 1 to 2 weeks as we finalized the drill locations on the Arco de Oro Target. There will be at least 5 holes drilled there.
Okay, so that's on the northwest part of the property you're talking about, and that's the northwest extension of the Arco de Oro trend you're talking about, and that brings me to ask you about some of the neighbors. Can you remind investors some of the major mining companies that are in this area of Chile?
Well, we're in the porphyry belt, so you can name them. The name is long, or the list is long, of course, but the most prevalent is the El Salvador mine, which dates back to 1906, I believe it is, and has produced massive quantities of copper and of gold. So the really good part is they're low on feed, but also the Porteria smelter is very close by. So infrastructure, including paved roads to both of those facilities, are right on the edge of the property. So we find ourselves, well, this is Terry's interpretation, so I want to be careful about diving into geology, but in similar caldera collapse features as the El Salvador mine. So every time we drill there, we get mineralization, alteration. It's been quite interesting, and that's what has us so encouraged and so pumped about the property.
Yeah, so that can't really be overstated. You could you could potentially truck ore in a future mining operation to the smelter, which is located in pretty close proximity. And obviously there's multiple copper mines in this area of the country, within 40 or 50 miles. This is obviously copper country, and there's some very big mining companies. So that's what makes it. That's one of the things that makes Salvadora so fascinating to me. The potential that exists to move this forward once the drilling has revealed something that's worthy of an economic ore body. Tom Woolrych is an investor that we both know pretty well. We talk to on a regular basis. He's taken a liking to San Lorenzo here in the last year. What is the feedback he's given you, and what have your conversations been with with other investors in terms of what they like to see the company do?
That's such a great question. Tom is a supporter, and I value his comments. I think it would be safe to say that Tom would like us to focus on Cerro Blanco and the potential that's there. We've been talking to a number of other people as well that have done modeling on, for instance, Arco de Oro, and made suggestions about the potential there. They kind of think, well, one fellow said, Arco de Oro is like shooting fish in a barrel, so why wouldn't you focus on that? Well, you could expand that and say, why not do some drilling at Cabaya Muerto and at Tres Amigos and test that southern target that we haven't even done? Well, yeah, we have a limited budget, and I do see us expanding significantly after this drilling program. I really do. And I can only answer that we're getting different loves of different targets from different people. We've had a lot of interest in a lot of offers of financing. And as we said earlier in this conversation, we made a decision, we're going to stick with it. Hopefully it's the right one. But yeah, there's so much potential here. And that's, well, I'm repeating myself, but that's what's got us so pumped.
Okay, so let's talk about money again. So I looked at the latest financials. Company has a little bit over 1 million in the bank, but you just put out a news release saying that you're willing to loan the company an additional $1 million to fund this phase of drilling. So is 2 million CAD, is that enough to see the company through this next phase of drilling?
Yes, absolutely. We have more than $1 million right now. And this additional $1 million will, I know these are small budgets for a lot of your viewers, but the drilling targets are so compelling that a couple $1 million can make a real big difference. The answer to your question is yes, we're funded for this next program. We expect it to be 9 or 10 holes.
Oh, okay. So 9 or 10 holes, I'm guessing 3,000 meters. Is that fair?
Boy, would I love to be able to answer that. So we both know that the depth of a hole kind of
varies.
is determined by a bunch of things, right? So some of the ones at Arco de Oro admittedly can be shallow because they're going to cross-cut vein systems just to prove up strength length. Some of the Cerro Blanco holes are tough to say how deep they're going to be. And then on the IP feature at the northwest extension, which is like 3 kilometers away from where we've been drilling already at Arco de Oro, that northwest extension, one of those lines is interesting. And I see us drilling at least a couple of holes there as well. And it will be hard to predict how deep those holes would be until we get into the ground.
Okay. But basically the $2 million that the company has access to, approximately $2 million currently, funds you for 4,000 or so meters if you need to expand the program to that amount, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's costing us about $300 all in Chile. When I say all in, I don't include construction costs, but that includes drilling and assaying and field supervision. Okay. So you can do the math there, I guess.
Okay. So to put a bow tie on this conversation, Al, if all goes well, the drilling will commence in the next couple of weeks at Salvadora at the Cerro Blanco Target number 1 or hole number 1 in this next phase of drilling. And 9 to 10 holes in total across multiple target areas is planned for this next phase of drilling at Salvadora. And this is a big moment in time for San Lorenzo Gold. Sort of, to use an overused term in the junior mining sector, it's sort of a make or break, because if things go well, this could be a much bigger company very quickly. If things don't go so well, then something else will happen.
You know, Robert, there's no other way to say it, man. Like, I agree with you. I'm not about to sit here and say, or talk about drill results before they've happened. So you're absolutely right about that.
All right. Very good. Thank you for your time, Al.
Hey, great to see you.